Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport. And we can be found on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for the Hard Compound and you'll find us. Come and join the fun. We generally put out 3 articles a day. It's morning, lunchtime and evening here in the UK, or whatever time that is where you're tuning in from. These articles take the form of race reviews, race previews, any breaking news, throwbacks, any new livery unveils, and anything we can shake a stick at, really. And we cover everything from F1 to IndyCar to NASCAR, rallying, touring cars, bikes, and again, anything we can shake a stick at. We're just here for a love of motorsport, and we want to share that with you. So if you come along and join us, we'd love to have you on board. So yeah, search for the Hard Compound, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, and come along for the fun. You might have noticed that we also do live video interviews, such as this one. These are broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and they're also saved in the video section on Facebook and in the live section on our YouTube. We've had, we've done well over 100 of these, and I'm not going to name every guest that we've had, but we've just a few. We've had the honour and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Mario Andretti, with Mr. Jackie Ickx, John Watson, Hans Stuck, Mr. Brian Redman, with Frank Durney, the designer of many Williams F1 cars. We've had a lot of the British touring car paddock and the support series drivers. They've all come on for a chat in the past. And we've had lots of drivers who have raced in sports car and F1. Daly, Mark Schura, Emmanuel Carl Wendlinger, Derek Warwick, David Brabham, etc., etc. But if you're tuning in tonight, you might like IndyCar or NASCAR. And we've had a lot of IndyCar drivers on, guys like Ari Leyendijk and Mr. Danny Sullivan, Bad Willie T. Ribb, Brian Herter, Alex Palou, Will Power, Alonso Jr., Paul Page, Eddie Cheever, Stefan Johansson, and many others. And we've also had a guy who's done both, Mr. Derek Daly, which leads us very nicely onto this evening's guest, or this afternoon's guest. He's actually Derek Daly's son. In Indiana's favourite racing son at the moment, no doubt about that. And we're into the month of May, so who better to talk to as we head towards the Indianapolis 500, in which he is competing. So without any further ado, please join me in extending a very, very warm welcome to Mr. Conor Daly.
How are we doing? Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming on, Conor. I've been wanting to get you on here for a while because obviously you've raced a lot of things and you do your own podcast, all that kind of stuff, and hugely popular driver. So thank you very much for coming on. It's much appreciated.
No problem. It's you've got quite a list of guests, so it's cool to be added to that list.
Yeah, well, yes. I've been very fortunate. All these lovely people keep saying yes to interviews, and I'm very, very grateful for it. It's great to have you on the list of guests. I just want to turn my attention very quickly to the comment section. If you have any comments or questions, or you just want to talk amongst yourselves, we will see it. We'll see them all in live real time is what I'm trying to say. So if you have any comments, questions, then do put them in. I see someone's already mentioned the Penske scandal. We're going to come to that. We will work that in later. So yes, just let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have any comments and questions, then do put them in. So I guess the best place to start, I always ask this to people, how they became interested in motorsport. But I guess, Conor, with you, it's quite obvious, given that we've spoken to your dad earlier on this year. It was always going to happen, wasn't it?
Well, the funny thing about that is my dad retired when I was born, so I actually didn't get to see my dad racing any cars. So everyone thinks that oh, you probably saw your dad race. That actually never happened. The best that I saw, or the most that I saw, was my dad tested a Jordan Formula One car in 2000, the early 2000s, when I was about 11 or 12, maybe 10 or 11. And it's I had barely just started racing, and he did a story for Road and Track. And obviously he's close with Eddie Irvine. And so Eddie, he did a story. Nick Heidfeld was driving for Jordan at the time. And I went over with him to see that. And like, I thought that was obviously very cool at the time. But yeah, I didn't get to see my dad race. So the only thing that I saw growing up was, everything around the house, helmets, suits, things of that nature, some really cool photographs. Obviously, the cars, the Formula One cars that he got to drive back in the day were just cool. There's no other way to describe them. Cool and an incredible group of drivers, and even the IndyCar days, were interesting as well. So, but I only just saw pictures. So we would go to the racetracks because he was doing commentating, and my mom obviously worked at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so I was there every time that I could be there. Every race. I never missed a race since birth, except for one when I had to race in F2 at Monaco. That was the only one that I missed. But yeah, actually no, the F2 race, I actually did make it back for the IndyCar, the Indy 500. It was 2012 where I missed the Indy 500, but yeah, so I was always around it. That was for sure the thing. The funny part about the internet is that I actually see more of my dad racing now than I ever did because of clips that surface on YouTube, things that keep resurfacing, video that's been, redone and kind of polished up a bit. And there's so many more people now that are like caring about Formula One too, in North America, at least, after Netflix, that you see more and more. So it's actually kind of cool every day. Even today, I found another photo on Twitter that I hadn't seen before of my dad in an IndyCar. So it's kind of cool what the internet has provided when it comes to that.
Yeah, it is kind of cool because obviously people of my age, I'm kind of early 40s now, and our memories of the people of my age, our memories of the 80s are a bit hazy, and especially like today's the anniversary of Ayrton Senna's death, as we know, and that's still kind of the first clear memory I have. But everything before that, I got into F1 in '86, and everything before that is kind of hazy. So it's nice to have so much video archive and images and things like that, from back then, to look at. But it must be very odd for you seeing your dad going there, and because there's the photo of him as at Zandvoort where he's up in the air, and there's the other
a lot of crash photos. Yeah, a lot of crash photos.
Yeah. that kind of came out wrong. I didn't mean it.
No, it's all right. There's plenty of those with every driver, really.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a few escapes as well, which is obviously good.
Yeah.
In one piece, just about. So, when did you first take an interest in actually going racing yourself, whether it be with karts or just going to watch, more regularly?
I mean, I was watching racing every chance that I could. So I was involved in like caring for the sport, but I looked at drivers kind of like superheroes. I didn't think that was possible. I thought that you were like born into being a driver and like you couldn't do it was a weird mental thing. Like trying to describe it sounds weird, but it was like I didn't know that I could be one. You know what I mean? I just thought that these were just people that were like incredibly just they're there and they were just meant to be racing drivers. I didn't know that. And then I got a chance to drive a go-kart when I was 10, which is young, but not as young as some people would start. And then, as soon as we got into a go-kart, that was like what I really wanted to do more of. And I tried playing other sports, but I wasn't good at them. And I didn't want to practice at them. But like racing, I wanted to do more of. Like I wanted to be better. And like there was we found kind of like feeling like winning in go-karts was like a really satisfying feeling. Like you're like, oh, I like this feeling. I like beating everyone. And so, from then on, it was very hard. And there wasn't like a lot of, winning races was very satisfying, but you do so many kart races when you're a kid. Like you can do so many go-kart races all across the country, wherever it is. And like some of them, I was able to win a lot of races, thankfully, but there'd also be some where you're like, how on earth did we finish like last? Like certain go-karts worked at certain different places better. And I would race against Joseph Newgarden when I was a kid. And, like I thought he was good, but you didn't really know, like that was at a local level. Then if you go to the national level, there's a ton of different folks. Turns out both of us at a local level were actually ended up making it actually out to be all right. So, it was good competition from day one that I was up against, which was nice. But yeah, as soon as we started getting more serious about it, I realized that like this had to take all my time. And my dad made sure to tell me like, this has to be your entire focus. Like nothing else has to come into play. Like I obviously needed to finish high school, like go through middle school, high school and do that. My parents wanted me to do that. But, every part of my attention was how could I be a better racing driver? How could I understand the go-kart and then cars technically when I was like 14, 15, getting into car racing. And it all seemed to be going the right direction because we were winning. If it was going another direction and we weren't successful and my dad didn't see that like, hey, like I could do this job, then, I'm sure it probably would have gone a different way. But when you win and you're able to kind of get yourself into a position to where this was going to work, I guess that's how, thankfully it worked out. But it started at 10 and then every year on from then, it just got more and more serious.
Yeah. And I guess once you get the taste of racing and winning, it automatically becomes serious because okay, it's good to take part and all that, but you got to win. And when you win, it feels good, and you got to go again, haven't you? So, and from the research I've done, you raced, what was it, in the Ohio Valley Karting Championship, then the WK Manufacturers Cup, and
that's getting real deep in the research. Yeah, I actually barely even remember what go-kart races I did back in the day.
I dug way in. But I've got here 2005 Kart Racers of America champion, which is good, your first sort of championship. And I guess, actually, no, I want to come to one more thing. The 2006, the brilliantly named Robopong.com 200. It's an endurance race, isn't it?
That's Joseph's family's company. Joseph Newgarden's family was the sponsor of that event. Yeah, Joseph's grandfather started Robopong, which is a ping pong robot. So, like, there's a fun fact for everyone. That was Joseph Newgarden's family that sponsored that event.
There you go. I had no idea. I spoke with someone else on here who'd raced it. It might have been.
A lot of us did. Back in the day, the Robopong 200 was like the coolest event you got to do. There's a photo of me, Dan Weldon, Thomas Schechter, Catherine Legg, and Joseph, like all of us doing that event. And this is like before Joseph and I had even got anywhere. That event was so much fun.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah. I've had Catherine on. I think it might have been Catherine that I spoke to, actually. It was either her or maybe might have been Dalton Keller. I can't remember. But just what a brilliant and you came runner up with another guy, Graham Rahal, obviously, who's
Graham was he was my teammate.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Oh, cool. That's fantastic. Also, so you've done that. You come runner up. You've won a championship in karting. I guess you were always looking at moving into cars once you were old enough and able to do it. Was it always on the road to Indy kind of ladder, or that kind of trajectory? Was that what you were aiming for, or was it?
Honestly, at the time, my only goal was to be a Formula One driver. I was exposed more heavily to IndyCar. But my dad, when we talked about it, it was like, well, there's no Americans in Formula One. At the time, Scott Speed was there, but like then he was gone, and so it was like, well, we would like to take the American flag to Formula One. That would be awesome. And but we had to start. Like we couldn't just jump over there. Had to kind of start establishing myself over here. And we didn't really know how to do it other than at the time there was a scholarship system. Like my dad didn't my dad made it to Formula One. Yes. But like, I don't know if people noticed, but there were not a lot of people making huge money doing that back in the day. Right. Yeah. And like even getting to IndyCar, that doesn't mean you're like out here rolling around in cash. You know what I mean? So we had to figure out a way to get me through there. The funding part is the hardest part for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, unless obviously you're like Lance Stroll or something like that. Like that's a different route. But like the only way that I made my way is by winning the championships that gave you a scholarship to get to that next level. And I also had, once we won the first championship that I was in, we were getting help from Jerry Forsyth, who actually was a Champ Car team owner back in the day, big in the kart era, and Paul Tracy, all kinds of guys that drove for him. And he just bought part of the Long Beach Grand Prix, which is great. But Jerry Forsyth was helping out for me to kind of get that first chance to get into race cars. And then I was able to win and kind of self-fund myself up to the age of like 18, 19. And then Trevor Carlin called my dad and was like, hey, we think Conor can be an F3 and like go towards the Formula One route. and we had a scholarship at the time to help do that. So, the Road to Indy scholarship system is really kind of what helped me get myself into the scene of motor racing. And then after my first year in F3 or GP3, it was Force India signed me to a development contract. So then Force India was helping cover the rest of my adventure into Europe and towards Formula One. So again, success is the only reason why I got to where I was. It wasn't for any other reason. And I don't like to talk about myself in that way, but that's when I tell young drivers, what do you have to do? Well, you have to win. Like, that's it. If you win, then you get to place, at least can put yourself into a position to be, to make it to the highest level. So that was kind of how we got to where we got. And oddly enough, I got 11 years ago today, I was driving a Formula One car. So it's kind of wild to think about that. But I just got a Facebook memory, which is hilarious. But
Wow.
But yeah, I was like, we were testing in at an airfield somewhere in England.
The Cotswolds.
Yeah. No, this one I can tell you exactly. I screenshotted the memory. What airfield? I think it was the. Oh no, never mind. It went away. But it was some airfield. It wasn't Cotswold, but I know which one you're talking about.
Okay, so one of the which is about an hour that way.
Yeah.
But no, I mean it's kind of cool because you say about like winning is key and things like that, and I think that's more. I could be wrong, but I think that's more relative to the Road to Indy ladder because I mean here you can win in F3 or F4 and whatever, but you still need the money in your back pocket even if you're the champion, and you see people with better funding. Guys who've come third, fourth, and fifth, who make the step. But with the Road to Indy ladder, when you win a championship, you're up into the next level almost automatically, isn't it? Or at least for the first few rounds, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, in my era, it was enough money to get a full season in the next level. So it was enough funding. Now the budgets have changed a little bit, but yeah, I was lucky enough to have at the time enough budget to get into that next level. And so getting over to Europe was tough, but Trevor Carlin made it happen. And still to this day, Trevor Carlin was one of my favorite people to work with back then, but then also in IndyCar, he gave me one of the greatest chances that I've had. And still to this day, one of the most satisfying experiences I've had is to be on pole with those guys.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. And obviously they've had a change of ownership and leadership and a name change, but Carlin, huge, I think Trevor's known for being like the talent spotter, isn't he? He when he spots someone young, and he takes a chance on them, then they must be pretty good.
Trevor is a smart guy. He's still one of the smartest people and best people that I've ever worked with in this sport, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to backtrack very quickly, I mean, when you came out of karting, obviously you were still karting when you made the move into the Skip Barber Championships. You had was it 4 races, things like. How did you find the transition from karts to cars? I mean, this is something I ask a lot of people, and half of them say, well, the car I got into was like a big go-kart, and the others say it was night and day. So I was just wondering what it was like for you.
For me, honestly, I was way more successful in cars than go-karts. I won go-kart races. I thought I was good in go-karts, but cars, it suited my driving style way better than go-karts. And even still now, I like to do a lot of karting. I hope to do some next week in preparation for the month of May. I don't own a go-kart, but when it comes to for whatever it is about the go-kart, I can be good in go-karts, but I'm not there were guys that you saw in go-karts that were those guys were the best. But what's funny is those guys never actually made it in cars. There were some guys that just were really, really good in go-karts, and their chances in cars didn't really kind of equate. So there's a bit of a different driving style switch. Obviously, there are some people that can be good in both too. That's obviously true as well. But yeah, something about the cars and feeling the way the car drove, the roll of the car, the movement, the aerodynamics, certain things. I mean, obviously, when you get into cars early on, there's not a ton of aerodynamics to use, but there was something about getting into cars that I really, really took to and enjoyed quite a lot.
Yeah, that's good. It's so good that you kind of took to it straight away, and obviously you raced in the Formula 4 the Ontario series as well. But 2008, your first season in the Skip Barber Championship. Obviously, you had a good feeling for driving cars, as you say. Did you expect to be competitive straight off the bat? Or was it a case of let's see how this goes?
Well, it's interesting because that year, the Skip Barber National Championship, like back in that era, was like that was the place you had to go. Like if you wanted to make it in racing, that was the place. Like you had guys like Ryan Hunter-Reay came through there, Scott Speed, Alex Rossi did it. Like everyone did Skip Barber. Like all the drivers that if you were going to make it, that's where you had to go. And that year in the Skip Barber National Championship, I had done a couple races in 2007, like one national race in Cleveland, just to kind of dabble in it. And Joseph Newgarden was like also dabbling. Like we were just kind of trying to, a couple regional races, but the national championship is what you wanted to do. And that year in the national championship, when you look back on it now, it's kind of crazy. You see lots of people who made it in professional motor racing. I won the championship. Joseph Newgarden, I think, finished second. Conor DeFilippi, factory BMW IMSA driver. He was in that championship. Gabby Chavez was rookie of the year at the Indy 500 as well. Stephen McAleer, who's also racing in sports cars professionally now as well. A lot of good people in that championship that we got to compete against. And so those are just a few. And there was 25, 26 car grids. And so it was a great racing championship to kind of get into. But my dad's theory the whole way through racing was that I got to do 2 years at each level. Well, the problem is I won my rookie year. So I kind of beat his system and I had to go to the next level already. So we kind of plan, like my dad's model was the Lewis Hamilton model of you got to do 2, like Lewis did 2 years in F3, 2 years in GP2 or something before he kind of 2 years at a time seemed to be the move. And then that's what we did with the Pro Mazda championship, the next level before I won the championship. So yeah, we kind of won faster than my dad expected and how we expected.
Yeah, which is always nice, isn't it? Just to take a year off it. Yeah, take a year off it. Just from that season, I said that you've got, was it third in just your second race at Sebring? Got a podium there. You had wins at Mosport and Barber, and further wins at Road America, the brilliantly named Thunderbolt Raceway. I love that. At Road America. I've got here that you took 8 podiums from 15 races, including 5 wins. That's a pretty good season. And you won the championship and you beat Joseph Newgarden to it, which is, that's got to be good, isn't it?
Well, at the time, it was just the funniest part about Joseph and I is we've done so much racing all of our lives. When I won the local go-karting championship, guess who also finished second? It was Joseph Newgarden. And then when I moved to a different championship, Joseph then won the next year. And we then did the Team USA scholarship, which is a little bit after of kind of what you're talking about. But Joseph won the Formula Ford Festival. I won the Walter Hayes. So it was such an odd, it was either Joseph and I. That was my biggest rival, but also one of my closest friends. And still now Joseph is, one of my very, very close friends. But yeah, he was, at the time you didn't know who you were going up against. We even still in 2011, we were teammates in Indy Lights. That's when he won the championship and I tried to move over to Europe. But we're both winning races in that too. So it was always Joseph. That was the guy. It was either him winning or me winning, it felt like. And so, obviously it's interesting how careers, eventually play out. Part of me sometimes regrets going over to Europe because I was on the right road to make it in the right way in IndyCar. But going to F3 certainly was challenging. And then coming back was even more challenging, trying to reassert myself into IndyCar. But yeah, it was a good junior route. I was very lucky to enjoy a lot of success and race against a lot of good drivers who I still get to race against now.
Yeah, very cool. Something I've got to touch on. You touched on it with the Walter Hayes Trophy, Formula Ford. You came over here to good old cold, wet England. You basically, was the Walter Hayes Trophy, was it your first time racing in England?
Yes. Yeah. I had done, well, no, because the Walter Hayes was after the Brands Hatch Formula Ford Festival. So technically it was the second time. Festival, yeah. But that meant a lot. That win was a very big one for me. I thought it seemed like it was a very well-respected event at the time. There was a lot of, good drivers who have raced a lot of Formula Ford races in the past there. And it was something that was new to both Joseph and I, and we were so young at the time. So, and I loved racing at Silverstone. It was a great time. But yeah, that was a really cool win. That was a very, very memorable experience, I would say, with my family and my Irish family was able to make it over there as well. Cause obviously my dad's whole side of the family is in Ireland. So that was cool.
No, that's very cool. And it's a great place to win as well. Just want to
Yeah.
touch on Brands Hatch. I mean, we always talk about Brands Hatch on these chats, no matter who I talk to, whether it's a young racing driver or someone like Mario or Danny Sullivan or someone, and they all said they absolutely love the Brands Hatch, like GP circuit, the long circuit. What did you think of Brands Hatch?
I am not as sold on Brands Hatch as everyone.
Ooh,
I
controversial.
I think it's a great track. And I'm still bitter about that race this many years afterwards because I had a throttle stick in one of the heat races and it ended up DNFing us in one of the races. And we had to start so far back in the final race. And I enjoyed the race. It was a great race. I think we still finished like 5th or 6th or something. But like I'm still mad that like I didn't win that one. I was like, oh man, like I thought we could have won it. But we had a DNF in one of the heat races. But it definitely a unique race. I'm blown away that I never actually got to race again there afterwards. I thought I would have, but that was the only time I ever got to race there. I attended races there. I went to an F3 race there. I went to a DTM race there to watch Robert Wickens actually race when he was in the DTM series. But yeah, other than that, I haven't been back since, which is a shame. But still a great place. I mean, very unique.
Yeah. It hasn't changed much, really.
No, yeah.
It's still cool. I was there a few weeks ago. Yeah, very, very cool. Just want to sort of move on quickly. You had a couple of years in the Star Mazda Championship. You took 3rd overall your first season. You're only outside the top 8 twice. You were constantly running at the front there. And then that was 09, and then 2010. It was like a breakout year, I guess. Won the title by quite a long way. That one does the 2020 season, the 2010 season stick out in your mind as being a year that really pushed you forward at all?
I just had a lot of confidence coming back that year after using the experience that I learned. And that was a year with Juncos Racing, which obviously they're now in IndyCar. That was their first car championship, I think, and got a great relationship with Ricardo Juncos, who still, is putting on a great product in IndyCar right now with Roman Grosjean. They've done a great job so far this year. But yeah, that was just, and again, a lot of good drivers in that championship. That felt good to race against several, a couple guys that made it to IndyCar, made it to prominent sports car racing careers. So that was a fun year. It was a year where that built a lot of confidence in me as a young driver, and it felt like it was a very respectable way to win a championship as well. After that, like it felt like it was like now I was on the radar in the professional scene, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, very cool. And I've got here, it was a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 wins in the year. One thing I did to ask you though, you were on the podium in every single round that year, apart from one, where you took 4th at New Jersey. Now, as a driver, do you see the bigger picture, or does it kind of annoy you that you just missed out on a clean sweep of podiums?
Yeah, I was really frustrated. The funny thing is I had forgot about that until now. So like, sorry. I don't remember what happened, but I think we had to start last in that race. I think we had to start like 20 something, and you might be able to. I don't actually know that, but I am 90% sure I had to start last that race because we either had a failure in qualifying or something. And I got all the way to 4th, but I couldn't quite get that last spot. So yeah, that's kind of funny. But yeah, it was a great year. It was a fun year to be a young driver and trying to make it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Very cool stuff. 2011, you moved into Indy Lights. Just a part season. It feels like a bit of a silly question asking why, given that you went to GP3. But was the plan for a full season and Indy Lights, or was it?
There is actually a story behind it. So the scholarship that I won in Pro Mazda, so the road to Indy had only really just been set up. So that scholarship was very new. And it was funded by Mazda at the time, like the Mazda Speed scholarship system. John Doonan, who's now at the top of IMSA, he's a great part of my career. But that we had kind of told them that like, we're actually going to go pursue Formula One. Like I want to go to Europe. And they were like, well, but you have a scholarship. And I was like, well, can I take it to Europe? And they didn't really know how to say no. So they were like, well, you still have to do something here in America. And so the way it worked out is we were able to kind of split the scholarship. Trevor gave us like a really, really good deal on the GP3 side, and we were able to kind of split the prize money and do a full season in GP3, and then 5 Indy Lights races.
Right.
And it was just kind of that was just the way it worked out. Like to go racing in Europe, I still had to do something in America.
Sure.
And then after and the weird thing is the way the GP3 season started, it didn't start till May. So like I had already done 3 Indy Lights races and was leading the championship when I left to go race in Europe. And then I'll never forget, Graham Rahal called me when I was at the airport. And he's like, "Are you sure you want to leave?" And I was like, yeah. Like at the time, I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like I got to go try to make it to Formula One. I've only got one chance to try to do it. And so sometimes you look back and it's like, well, what if? But I can't regret anything. I still enjoyed a lot of success in Europe, and some of those successes are definitely some of the most satisfying in my career for sure, especially against some of the guys that we were going against.
Yeah, sure. And as you say, when you get a chance to do something, especially if it might end up in F1, you kind of have to take it. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
I think you'd be wondering more if you hadn't done it. You think,
oh, for sure.
What if I'd done that? You'd have been feeling even sort of, you'd be feeling more negatively about that, I think.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have the friendships that I made, like guys like Carlos Sainz and Lando and Daniel Ricciardo, like friends that I made when we were all trying to be racing drivers. Like you wouldn't have that, if I hadn't done that. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of guys that I still, respect the heck out of and have enjoyed becoming friends with over the years, that I would never have had.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Some cool names dropping in there as well. I like that. That's good. Obviously, you went to GP3 with Carlin. F1 was obviously the target. It felt like a bit of a slow start. I guess you were getting just used to the car and the team and everything else. But then it kind of clicked a bit with points at the Nürburgring and Spa. I mean, there's 2 good circuits to take some points at. That must have been a real confidence hit for you.
Well, it was the biggest ego check in my life because I had gone from like leading the 2nd highest championship in America on the way to IndyCar. I qualified 29th at the first GP3 race in Turkey. And I will never forget how awful that felt because my teammate, Tom Dillman, was on pole and I qualified 29th. And I was like, how in the world did that happen? And at the time, Pirelli was very new to the sport. And so like, we were finding all these random, like Tom Dillman, when he qualified on the pole, he's like, I have no idea how I qualified on pole. Like we look at the data and it's just like, if you find the grip, and it's still what you talk about now. They talk about that grip window for these Pirelli tires. And they were so new that no one really understood like what it took to activate them. And so that was such a wild experience for me. But again, that year was very, very progressive. We slowly started, figuring out the tire, figuring out qualifying, figuring out the races. And yeah, as you mentioned, like the first race of the year, qualified 29th. The last race of the year, we were in a position to finally be on the podium when Bottas took me out in Monza. So it's like, all right, we had got to a place where we were finally running at the front. And again, getting a couple of those points finishes, Nürburgring was one of my favorite races still of my whole career. Because it was raining and we were on slick tires, and I had made the choice to stay on slick tires and just use the brakes to keep the heat in the Pirellis. And we managed to finish 5th there. And it was an amazing event. Some cars were on wets, some cars were on dries. But yeah, learned a ton that year. And then by the end of that year, there were other people, including Force India. This is after, like, by the end of the year, they were like, we think that we see something here because of the progression that we had made. And then, yeah, we got to go then with the best team the next year with ART, the next 2 years, really. So it was a very humbling journey. But by the end of it, it was like, shoot, we're at the front now. And these guys are good up here. Bottas won the championship, a lot of different good guys that were in that year. So it was cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, excellent. And a huge improvement throughout the years, you say. Then you moved to ART. I saw a little chat you had with Romain Grosjean and said you learned some French while you were out there, and which is all good. I did French at school, but we're not going to go into that.
Me too. Yeah.
But that second season must have been good. I mean, you took a victory in the sprint race, Barcelona. That must have been cool. Your first win in the series.
Yeah, that was a big one. That was a really cool moment. American national anthem playing on an F1 weekend meant a lot. I think my dad even shed a tear, which is kind of wild.
Wow.
But yeah, that year still look back on just made a ton of mistakes that year. I think I put too much pressure on myself being with the best team. Like I knew it was a good team. The French too are very aggressive. It was a very different environment. There was no fun to be had. You just had to be successful. And so like, I certainly made mistakes. I didn't understand things. So I had to do a lot of work on my own mind after the 2012 season and kind of fixed almost all of those problems for 2013. So it was definitely a huge learning experience to be at the front in a European championship that was full of, people that ended up being quite successful. And so that was quite a learning year for me. Even though we got a lot of podiums that year, but also like a ton of DNFs and stuff that were like, oh shoot, that's not great. So yeah.
So, and as you said off air, I actually saw one of your podiums at Silverstone. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was a good race.
I did I'm going to go on to 2013 very quickly, but I did see Billy Edgerton. Evening, Billy. He runs the IndyCar Fans UK page on Facebook. He said that before we get to 2013, he said that he saw you racing in GP3 Spa 2013, which his family attended, and said that Conor was awesome that weekend, and it was great, especially given that he's Irish. Given that Billy's Irish and with his strong Irish roots, it was very cool to see you on the podium in Spa.
That was a double podium that weekend. That felt really good. Well, I hated that I didn't win, but I think I had 2 seconds or something like second and third. But I loved Spa. Racing at Spa was one of my favorite things ever. And I was very lucky to get to be successful there, be on the podium there. I wish I could. There was talk, like I'm doing some sports car races later in this year, and the team that I'm driving for, they're like, oh, we should do the 24 hours of Spa. I'm like, yes, we should. I would love to be there. So I would love to make it back over to some European sports car races. Definitely want to do Le Mans. But Spa was a great experience, and I always happen to go well there for some reason. So that's cool.
No, that'd be cool to see you in a sports car around Spa and around Le Mans, of course, as well. That would be cool. I'd like to see that myself. Just very quickly on 2013, there's a comment I'm going to come to in a minute from David on YouTube. 2013, goodness me. I've lost my position on my notes. Sorry, folks. I've just got so many notes here. Was it 2013 at Monza? You were leading the standings. I remember watching this. You were leading the standings. There were about 5 of you in with a shout, and you got absolutely hammered. Was it the first corner?
First corner, yeah.
That's. I don't need to bring this up, but
no. I mean, the funny part about it is that you could point to a lot of things in like every driver has got like a moment where like life could have gone differently, right? Like everyone's got that moment. It's racing. But that year had gone pretty well, decent enough. There was the weekend at Silverstone, I think, was really robbed from us because of a jump start, which I still to this day, and Will Buxton believes that I did not jump the start. I think if I watch Lando Norris from a couple races ago, that was a jump start compared to what I did. But you also, I found out from Charlie Whiting, RIP, but found out from Charlie Whiting that you actually cannot have a perfect start. It's not allowed. Like you cannot be 0.000 reaction time, or else they call that. And I'm pretty sure we nailed it. And I had worked on starts all year. But anyway, that's my own opinion. I, of course, will live on that till I die. But but we were leading the championship in a position at the time at Monza, coming out of that chicane, coming out of the chicane, we were well in control. And I'm not gonna lie, we've had good results at Monza. Like the ART car was so good at Monza. I like that track. That had always suited my driving style. And we had come out of the chicane third, which was further ahead than any of our championship competitors. It was the penultimate round. We only had Abu Dhabi left after that. And The first race then sets you up for the second race, obviously, because where you start in the second race is where you finish in the first race, obviously, except for the top 8 reversed. And we got wiped out. So did a bunch of other people, not my championship competitors, but like me and Carlos Sainz and someone else got wiped out by a driver who completely missed the braking zone. Dino Zamparelli, I'll never forget.
Oh, yeah.
Completely missed the braking zone.
He raced in Porsches over here. Dino.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wiped everyone out. We made it actually through the corner, but I got hit so hard on the right front tire that there was a puncture. So we finished last in that race and then had to start last for the second race. So that means going 2 races essentially without any points, which you cannot do in the European Championship system. Yeah. And, still to this day, one of my best races, I think, in my life was race 2 at Monza. We started 27th, finished 8th in a 30-minute race, sprint race, and set fastest lap of the race. But that's 2 points. So we managed to get like 2 or 3 points, which wasn't enough. And Abu Dhabi, we were fine. I finished like 3rd and 4th or 3rd, or like some didn't finish outside the top 5, I don't think, which would have been enough. But it was just a different mindset after that. Like it was impossible to win leaving Monza because Danny Kvyat had won the race that's worth more points, and then had a good day, day 2 too. So it was tough, but that is where my European career ended right there. That was it. I can point to a lap, point to a weekend. My contract with Force India expired after that year because I had to win the championship to continue it. If I had won the championship, they would have funded me in F2 and then put me in as their kind of test driver for some of the F1 weekends. But it went away. So that was it.
It's just the way it goes, isn't it? Sometimes.
It is what it is.
That's racing. You mentioned Force India in F1. I'm going to come to that very shortly. I did see the question, though, from David on YouTube, evening or afternoon, David. He said that your father is very highly regarded as a race driver. Yeah, and he's a good guy. Came on here for a chat. We like him. How much influence did he have on your driving style? That's a good question. I like that.
I honestly don't know. My dad says that we're very different, and he says that I'm better than him, but I don't understand how you compare that. I don't really know. I think obviously him making it to Formula One in that era was an amazing accomplishment. I mean, you're talking about some of the greatest names in all of motor racing was in that era, and then so I don't know. I mean, he definitely bestowed upon me the need to develop my technical mindset. Like, my dad was not a very technical driver, but he said he wanted me to like really embrace the engineering side, understand the mechanical setup of the car, know how I need to describe an issue that I feel with the car. So I think that I was very lucky to get from him.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, hope that answers the question. I'm sure it does. Very cool. And we talked about F1, Force India. You was it straight line tire testing you did? I got from the research. What was it like getting into an F1 car? I mean, this was it 2012? So you were already in
12 and 13. Yeah,
12 and 13.
We did like three different days in the car. Yeah, in 2 different generations of it.
Okay. I mean, I've asked this to a few people who have done F1 tests. I had like Will Power on. He tested for Minardi previously, and other guys. Allens has tested for Williams, things like that. Was the F1 car everything you thought it would be when you got into it? Okay, it's just a straight line test, but what did you think when you got in it and put your boot down?
Well, I mean, I just working with a team at that level, and again, things have changed so much now. I mean, back in that time, no one had any idea in America what Formula One was, essentially. You know what I mean? So, like, if I can't even imagine if I would be doing that now. I mean, shoot, I'd be on Good Morning America next week. Like, people would love it. People freak out about it so much more now. But like back then, I was freaking out about it. I thought it was awesome. But like working with that team, working at such a high level, because I had developed Force India's first in-house simulator that they had. They'd only just bought their own simulator. They had a partnership with McLaren at the time, and so Adrian Sutil and Paul DiResta, we were all in the basement of the McLaren factory doing all their like real sim work while I was trying to develop their in-house sim. So I did so much work on the simulator version of the car, and still to this day working with some of the engineers and GP was there. Max Verstappen's engineer. He was at Force India when I was there. So like getting to work with him a little bit was fascinating. They had great people at that team that I still to this day am friends with. And being in that environment was amazing. But driving the car, like yes, there was a lot of straight line testing, but there was a couple of times we set up our actual like own track to kind of work on some braking stuff and work on a few other things. So in the end of the day, which sounds weird, they're all race cars. Like all race cars do the same thing, but they're, the Formula One car, the feel of the V8, like thankfully it was the V8 era, which was such an amazing feeling. It sounded incredible. It felt incredible. It felt special to drive it. And working with the team was just such a luxury. You had, 14 people on each tire. You had guys helping you with everything. Like it was just a very special group to work with that I thought that I still appreciate to this day. And I wish like they had my name painted on one of the headrests. I wish I could have got the headrest of the car. Like eventually I get to keep like a memento.
Yeah.
All I have is my Force India gloves. I didn't even get a suit made at the time. Now every single driver who's affiliated with an F1 team has an F1 suit. Every, F1 Academy driver has an F1 suit. All of these people have F1 suits. But back in the day, it wasn't that cool. You had to be like part of the team to get a suit. So I didn't get a suit, sadly. But I got gloves.
We can take gloves.
I'll take some Force India gloves.
Yeah, that's cool.
And a visor strip. I have it taped to my shelf behind me.
Oh, cool. No,
that's about it.
Yeah. No, so it's just cool hearing about people's different experiences of F1 cars and stuff. Because I sat in a replica one once, and that's the closest I'm going to get. It didn't even have an engine in it.
Yeah, still cool.
It was in Paris. It was in a shop in Paris. I just sat in it. I was like, "Yep, this is it."
That's all right.
But no, that's cool. Are we going to come to IndyCar and Indy 500, Davey, things like that soon? Just quickly over the next sort of few years, did like part seasons in back in the States in sports car and IMSA and IndyCar and things like that. With the part seasons, is it all down to like funding and backing and things like that? I mean, and around that time, was there any option for a full season, or was it just a case of we can do these three and then we might be able to do a couple later? And how did it always work out like that?
Yeah, I after the 2013 season that we mentioned, my entire career essentially collapsed. My dad couldn't really manage me anymore either because we kind of lost that road that we were on, and he had his own life to really kind of work with as well and manage. And so, I dabbling in F2 was silly, but like I had no funding to do anything else, and I was told that. Like the races that I did in F2 were funded. I have no idea how, still to this day, but it was with the worst team on the grid. No offense to those guys. They were nice, but just low budget operation. There'll always be that. But yeah, so even when I came back to America, it's not like I was just going to be drafted into IndyCar because if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. I mean, we go immediately to the David Maluka situation right now. He was hired by McLaren. He's injured, can't race. You're gone. You know what I mean? You're canceled in racing very quickly. And so even though I had won everything in America, I got back and they were like, "Oh, cool. So you're still alive?" And I'm like, "Yep, here we are." So I had no funding, nothing to insert myself into any team, any situation. And we had one sponsor for the 2015 Indy 500. That was a very low level, like very low budget sponsor. But we, got with a good team which is now the McLaren team, but it used to be Schmidt Peterson Motorsports. But I was their third car. And that was what I was looking forward to the entire, like early in the year. I was like, I'm going to go to every IndyCar race. I was driving the 2-seater, like I was sleeping on people's couches at the races. Cause I wasn't, not only are you not making any money, but you're not like doing anything other than trying to, make your way to a race however possible. And then the Indy 500, it's going well. My teammate James Hinchcliffe has a massive accident. He gets severely injured.
Yeah,
we're going to the race.
I spoke to him a couple of years ago and nasty.
That was crazy. Yeah. But we thought we had a great car and the car catches on fire before the race even starts. So then I'm thinking there's no way, like the racing is probably not meant for me. Like I am, after what had happened in 2013, 2014, like I'm thinking I am just there's something is going on and it's not for me. Yeah. But with Hinch getting injured, that then put me in his car.
Right.
which was a great chance to drive. And my very first IndyCar race on the street course in Detroit, we almost won the race. Like, we led the race in the rain. Had such an amazing car. Worked with a great group over there at now McLaren. And if Ryan Hunter-Reay didn't wreck me on the first race, we probably would have had like double top tens. But we almost won the second race, finished sixth, which still to this day, very, very proud of that one. And then I got to race for him in Toronto as well, which sort of put me back on the scene, because I think Toronto we finished like 12th. But as a rookie jumping into IndyCar, that was, at the time, I thought that was good. Nowadays, shoot, you'd be given a Ganassi ride. But like, it was a much different situation back then. A little more of a tougher realm for those that are jumping in. But yeah, I was very lucky to do that. And then Dale Coyne did call me and said he had a bit of a sponsor for the 2016 season for me to jump in as a rookie. And yeah, so then finally I did kind of get myself a chance through 2015 to finally be full-time doing something in 16.
Yeah, sure. That's good. It's just how things work out sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. That's life.
Yeah. Obviously, we're going to come to IndyCar now. Particularly, I've had to pick and choose bits here because we're in the month of May. Indy 500. I can't wait. If anyone spotted this, I got this a couple of years ago when I went there, and it's just the best race ever.
Oh yeah.
You made your IndyCar debut in the Indy 500, which is pretty cool. That was 2013. I'm just wondering how that came about, because obviously you said the European, you were racing in Europe, and it was it was going okay, GP3 and things like that. But how did it come to be that you ended up making your IndyCar debut at the biggest race of the lot?
It was actually the U.S. border that got me to do an IndyCar test. I won the MRF Challenge Championship in India over the winter, and then Larry Foyt called me at 3 a.m. India time, and he asked if I could do a test because Sato's visa or something hadn't been, Takuma Sato at the time, his visa hadn't been like sorted out, and so they needed a driver to test at Sebring in December. And I was like, yep, I will be there. And so I did my first IndyCar test, and that went well enough. We were somewhat competitive there. And they were like, well, we are going to run a second car at the Indy 500. Can you do it? And I was obviously racing full-time in Europe. But yeah, got a chance to do it. At the time, I was like, hey, this is great. I'm hired to be a racing driver. It was the first time I got like paid to be a racing driver. That was great. And yeah, then that was kind of how it went. And obviously, it was a bit of a tumultuous experience. It was a bit of I've learned kind of being like an extra car at the 500 is definitely a little bit difficult. And, I made a mistake and crashed in practice. But in the end, we actually had a great race. I was on fire most of the race in the pits, but we had a great race car, and I learned a lot. Got through all the laps, and then went and won in F3 the next weekend. So it was kind of a wild month of May. But yeah, that was kind of my first foray into the IndyCar scene.
That's a pretty cool week, isn't it? I've again asked this to a few people. The first time, I mean, obviously you'd have been to the Indy 500 before. Most of the drivers had been as a fan. Obviously, you're from Indiana. You're a local guy. Race day. When you wake up, you're at the circuit. It's Indy 500 morning. The crowds build up super early. I mean, we were stuck in traffic at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely fine. I mean, what's it like being inside the ropes? So the first time, Indy 500, the big one, the crowds are there, you're a local guy. I mean, you must have been absolutely buzzing.
Well, the funny thing about it is I still get the same feeling. It doesn't matter that I'm not a rookie anymore. I'm excited to, we always get motorhomes or something. Companies help us out, give us some buses, trailers to stay in for the whole month of May at the track. Mine goes in on Monday, and I'm just as excited as I was for my rookie year. I mean, it's the greatest place in the world. And I've been lucky to race all over the world, but like this is truly, there's something about the aura of it, the feeling of being in the track, the speed of the cars, the intensity that everyone has, the old school garage area. We've all got everyone's in the garages, and fans have access to the garage area. And it's just the coolest thing. You know, you're what you're doing is also really dangerous. The speed, the what you're putting on the line, I think is still at a higher level than almost any other place on the planet. And everyone that you're competing against. You know, I think I've been in an IndyCar era, which I think has been super unique. You know, we've had Fernando Alonso come over. We've had Kyle Larson this year, Kurt Busch, like some of the best NASCAR drivers. I would say Fernando Alonso, probably one of the best Formula One drivers that there is out there currently. If not, you know, he's got a couple world championships to prove it and still doing it now. And he became a great friend as well during that process. But it's all of the respect that you see for that event worldwide, I think makes it mean more. So it's pretty cool. It just doesn't get old like that. The only way to describe it is it just doesn't get old. It makes the hair on your arm stand. It gives you the goosebumps all the time. And I am literally dying to get out on the track. Like it's an addiction. Like being at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is an addiction, and I love it. And I also just saw a Twitter comment that says, asking if I'm in the motorhome all month long. Technically, no. My girlfriend doesn't like that as much. I used to stay there as soon as I could. So about the middle of next week, you're in there all the time. But you when you're at the track, like I'll get into it probably practice week, which is like May 14th, May 13th-ish. You're on track noon to 6. Like that's the entire day. And then you try to do some other stuff. And then you back in engineering at like 9 in the morning. I only live 15 minutes from the track. I don't want to leave the track. Like that's a lot of, like, if you got shower in the bus, you got food, you got everything you need, and you're studying stuff on the computer, you're at the track. Why not just stay there? Almost all the drivers do. They're out there. Alex Pillow and I are neighbors. We planned a barbecue last night. We're like, hey, we're going to have a barbecue out at the bus lot. So it's just a fun place to be for the whole month.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, I've had Alex on here. He's a good guy. He's a
great guy. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for Alex. And I didn't know Alex at all before he got to IndyCar. So it was cool.
He comes across as very sort of middle of the road and professional and stuff, but he's good fun, isn't he? He's a fun guy. He's good. I mean, we were at Carb Day in 2022, and you talking about not wanting to leave the track. I think I was the last person to leave. I was like, I'm not going up. It's just such a cool atmosphere. It's absolutely brilliant. And as you say, it sounds like it's a fun place to be, and especially when someone fills up your pool. Is it your like kind of relaxing pool with all those little
hot tub? Yeah,
that was a good
workout.
Who was that in the end? You know?
Yeah, it was Alex Rossi and Sage.
It was Alex.
Yeah, snakes. Yeah.
No need for it. I just seen the guys from Nitrocross are saying hello.
Hello.
Hi guys.
I love the Nitro fam.
Very cool. We're going to come to Nitrocross very shortly. But yeah, just to sort of backtrack a bit. You mentioned 2016, you full season with Dale Coyne Racing. That must have been good to get a full season. It was gonna, you know, it was. I guess it was always going to be a full season. And you could finally get your teeth into something after a few bit part rides.
Yeah, it was actually, like, when you look back on it now, like times change so fast and it's crazy. But Dale gave me a great opportunity. You know, Dale was. I still have a lot of respect for Dale. You know, at the time, when you look back, I got this contract to be an IndyCar driver for the season. I'm like, man, this is great. My salary was $0. So like everyone's like, wow, you're living the dream. You're racing IndyCar. I'm like, yeah, I was living with Hinch for free. Thankfully, James Hinchcliffe let me live for free because I wasn't making money. And obviously my expenses, thankfully, were covered by the team to get there. But as a full-time driver, you got a car to use. So I had a nice team vehicle at the time. That was all I needed. I didn't need money. I was like, I got a job. That's great.
Yeah.
There was free food at the track, so that was helpful. But honestly, that year was great for me because I got to work with Michael Cannon, who was my engineer, very experienced engineer, worked with a lot of great drivers, and he wanted to help Dale's team kind of get going a little bit. And the 2016 year was basically a development year for that group. We were definitely good in some places, definitely struggled in a couple other areas too. There was a lot of teams. Obviously, that was the Aero Kit era. Teams spending time in the wind tunnel. We were not in the wind tunnel. Teams spending time, developing a lot of different stuff. We were not doing that. We were, I had 4 different teammates, I think, that year, just a different, a merry-go-round of drivers in the other car. But there were still, to this day, some of the most enjoyable races. Qualifying, I really struggled. I couldn't quite figure qualifying out, but when it got to the race, we seemed to figure it out. I won a watch that year for passing more cars than anyone else during the season. So I was like, that was cool, I guess. I mean, that means we qualified terrible all the time, but we ended up racing well. So yeah, and there was a lot of moments where, I made rookie mistakes, but there were also a lot of moments that, were really, really cool and got to do a lot of great racing with a lot of great drivers. To be on the podium with Sebastian Bourdais and Juan Pablo Montoya. I mean, those guys don't suck. So that was really awesome.
That was in Detroit, wasn't it?
Yeah, Detroit. And so, there was a lot about that year that, if I look at how rookies are regarded now, if they have that type of success, I'm still quite proud of it. So definitely learned a lot. Working with Michael Cannon was still one of the best experiences in my career. Still a very good friend of mine. I wish I could work with him again. But such is the way life goes. And then, at the end of the year, the sponsor, I would have loved to have stayed there, but the sponsor wasn't there, and Dale needed a little bit of money. And I had got offered a drive with Foyt to be a paid racing driver. And so I thought that's what I needed to do. So it's an interesting way you kind of have to go through things, but very proud of my rookie year for sure. And there was tough moments, but a lot of really cool moments, running at the front and being a part of a championship at the time that was, extremely competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those where people look at the results and think, you finished here and there and everywhere else. But the field was so tight, so close. You could go from 8th to 18th in a heartbeat, couldn't you? So
yeah,
it was super competitive. Obviously you debuted with Foyt Racing. Very, very cool. I mean, AJ, we all know AJ, absolute, just a legend. I mean, the legend doesn't feel like a big enough word, but it must have been cool just to race for him for a full year as well. Obviously a bit of a mixed bag of a season, but you got up to like 5th at Gateway and 7th in Texas, things like that. Memories of that year? Was it a good year?
That's a tough one. That was it was a deal that I thought I was going to be there for 3 years. Like I thought it was like a development deal. Like, hey, we're committed to you. We know we have to grow, because that team knew that they were not in a competitive position. And I went there with Carlos Munoz too, who was a really good driver, who I still think, again, he deserved more than what we had. And Carlos and I were working our butts off, but we were just not competitive. There were times where we were just not there. But when we were there, like at St. Louis, we proved that we could fight at the front. But those chances came very rarely. So it ended up being essentially the roadblock to the rest of my IndyCar career. Like that pretty much ended it. But we obviously came back in a certain way after several years. But it was a shame the way it ended. Again, very cool to drive for AJ. I have a lot of respect for AJ, of course, more like a ton of respect, and love chatting with AJ. And it's not their fault at all the way that it went down. But you can always look. Hindsight's 20/20. But still got a chance to drive, got a chance to be a paid racing driver, which I'm very, very thankful for. It just. We did not have what we needed as drivers to succeed. And, the next year, Tony Kanaan was there and Matthias Leist, and, Matthias ended up, his IndyCar career got cut short too. So, and Tony, there was just a lot there that, was in development. And, I wish I could have worked with Tony. I thought I was going to be teammates with Tony Kanaan the next year. Wow. But yeah, it just wasn't meant to be. So it is what it is.
Yeah, didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
Just quickly, though, your best results that season were at Texas and at St. Louis, both ovals. Now, obviously, Brits and Europeans, being the daft creatures that we are, there's a lot of people think, it's just turning left. It's just, and it winds me up. It's so annoying. I can't imagine how annoying it must be for you guys. I'll put it this way: there's a reason Max Verstappen doesn't want to do the Indy 500. And if Max Verstappen doesn't want to do it, then something's frightening the heck out of him. Just very quickly, how much tougher is it racing on ovals, the banks, the speed, wind directions, and all that kind of stuff, to racing on, say, a road course?
Well, it's just a different art, really, and physically, it's way harder than people think too in the IndyCar because we do produce a lot of downforce on the short ovals, and even at Indy, like it's not as physically difficult, thankfully, because the G loads aren't as high. But you're racing for such a long time that it's quite difficult mentally, and physically. So it's. I mean, I guess I don't really know how else to describe it. Like on a road course, if you're having a rough day, you're probably not going to go anywhere else. Like if you're 14th, like especially in Formula One, like if they're 12th, or if you're 18th, you're probably not going to recreate the wheel and end up, in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And IndyCar road course racing, there's a strategic element with fuel and stuff where you could make something happen. But sometimes, like if your car is not quite good enough, and it goes green the whole way, you're probably just going to be there wherever you are after the start, wherever you figure it out. That's probably it. Whereas oval racing, you could make one wing adjustment, and all of a sudden you could go from being able to run 16th to 4th. Like you could have, there are several times on ovals where we'll not have the raw qualifying speed, so you start 19th, 20th. But boy, your race car might be well sorted out, and so you can race your way up. I think racing your way through the field is much more probable on ovals, and it's a different style and finding air. It's just, for me, it's very, very exciting. And the only issue is great days on ovals make you feel like a hero, but the worst days on ovals are like the worst days of your life. So like that's the difference. Like the worst days on an oval, you're like saving your life. Like I'm either dead or like I'm just gonna make it to the end. So that's the difference.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah,
I'm going to say Conor Daly says
this
about ovals. My mates might understand it a bit better. Obviously, just talking about ovals and things. We got to talk Indy 500 a bit more. We're going to come on to it this year very, very shortly. Got a few comments about that. Excuse me. I want to fast forward though to 2019. At the time, it was your best finish in the 500. 10th. You started 11th. Must have some cool memories of that year running well.
Yeah, I mean, we after 2018, which was like very much just at the bottom of the barrel, clawing at anything possible, substituting, just doing whatever I could. We had a great relationship with the U.S. Air Force, which is a partner, and they were like, "Well, where do we need to go to succeed?" And I was like, "Well, we need to go to Andretti, one of the best teams at Indy." And so getting to drive for Andretti, Michael and that whole group was just an amazing experience. Driving for Michael, being a part of an organization that has a shop, a race shop that is the size of, a small planet. Like it's amazing, being teammates with.
I've actually been to the old one. I actually went to the one in 22 and it's massive.
Yeah, exactly. When my teammates were, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Alexander Rossi, I don't know who else was there in 2019. A couple other good guys, I forget, but I don't think Colton was there quite yet. But anyway, it was a good team of people. And Marco Andretti obviously as well. But going there, and the engineer that I was working with too, such a good guy, Andy. He knew exactly what I wanted, and we had such a great car that year. My crew chief as well, Jeff Braun, which I had worked with again at ECR, but. Just a great group. All of it was just an amazing time. And the race was such a fun experience because I thought we had a very fast race car. We didn't have the car to win, I didn't think, but boy, were we at the front. And we had a gearbox issue on the last restart. Otherwise, we should have finished 4th or 5th. That's the most frustrating part about it is we had a missed shift, like not due to what I was doing, but we had a red flag. So everything overheated in the pits after that last red flag. And we had a gear issue there. And so we got absolutely demolished on the restart. But yeah, it was amazing to work with Andretti, and that set me up for more opportunities in the future.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, the immediate future after 2019, 2020, COVID, it hit a lot. It hit us all really hard, just in the world in general, and obviously we lost hundreds of thousands of people to it, and we're very grateful to have come through it. But was it tricky getting a seat together for that year when it all kind of kicked off with COVID? or was there something already in place with ECR?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great sponsor in the U.S. Air Force, and the way ECR was at the time is they had that seat that was split between ovals and road courses, which they have again kind of gone back to this year. So I did not have a budget for a full season, did not have what I needed. So I kind of slotted in where I could slot in, and obviously that year then was delayed by quite a considerable margin. But yeah, ended up in a position to where I could race a little bit more consistently, at least just for 1 year. And then ended up getting to drive the ovals with Carlin too, which was kind of wild as well.
And you did well
So,
with Carlin as well, didn't you? You sort of had
yeah,
some good
Carlin
results with
were
him.
all my better races. Like
Yeah.
Carlin were like, it's funny to see, but it kind of points to something when, if you race for two different teams in 1 year and I'm really good with one and the other, it was a struggle, maybe there's a reason why. But yeah, it was a great time to be, basically full time with two different operations. And that kind of continued into 2021 as well. But yeah, enjoyed some good success. Obviously, the ECR cars, there's no doubting, despite what we had in a lot of other places, the Indy 500 package for sure great. And to kind of be their lead driver in that race, finishing ahead of those guys a couple years in a row was really satisfying. My teammates, and then but getting myself slowly back to full time, even though it was the most like weird way you could do it. It ended up working out.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it was still not the greatest situation in the world. But getting to drive for Carlin and doing those races was really satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Just quickly, I've asked it to a number of people. Last one was Takuma Sato, who came on earlier on this year. He said that it was great when he won in 2020, but he hated the fact there weren't any fans there. That must have been so weird. I mean, it was weird enough watching on telly. It must have been so odd, given that it's so alive on race day from dawn till dusk, pretty much. And all of a sudden, there's no one there. It must have been so odd.
Yeah, that was honestly just ridiculous. I hated the fact that we had this Indy 500 and it was just, it was the way it was, but it was, that was the time we were in life. And we, we wanted to go racing still. We had to go racing for the partners that were in our cars and stuff like that. And we wanted to give people something to watch. But yeah, just, I don't even count that one because that was my worst 500 in the last like 6 years. So like,
right.
I don't even look back at 2020. It's just like that's just doesn't exist.
Yeah, we'll put a big red cross through that one.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, good stuff. You mentioned into 2021, a bit of continuity with ECR. A bit of a mixed bag across the season. It just didn't quite hook up, but you sort of did well on the road course and in the 500 again. You mentioned the Indy 500 package was good. Does the fact that IMS is your home circuit, does that help? do you get a bit more practice
honestly,
around there?
at the end of the day, the driver can really only go as fast as the car will let him, right? And like like that road course at Indy, my teammate won because I got wrecked in the first corner. I thought we could have won that race. We had a great car there. And the Indy 500, I thought we had a car to win that year. That team, despite how I feel about them now, did for sure give me a car to win that race. And worked with a great group of people. The mechanics on that car and the mechanics in that team in general are great people that I enjoyed working with. And engineers. But yeah, we had a great car to win. And then again, got caught up in some stuff that, a car that crashed in front of us, a tire that fell out of the sky that because of the aero screen, I couldn't see at all.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I never saw the tire. And it was just, that was one that for sure for the rest of my life, until I win. If we win this year, then it'd be different. But you look back on that one, that was tough. We had a great car in position to win, in position to be successful. And we ended up with a broken front wing. So, tis what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of glad you mentioned that. I mean, I was just going to touch on it. I can't remember who it was in commentary. I think it was either Hinch or Lee Diffie or someone said that you basically drop kicked this tire. Obviously, Graham had come out and
crazy.
He had a loose wheel, didn't he? And he hit in front of the turn two sweets. And
yeah,
I was going to ask if you saw it coming, and you just said you didn't. I mean, when you basically punted it up in the air with your nose, did you think, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, no idea. Yeah, I mean, I knew I'd hit something, but couldn't see it because there's a blind spot with the with the aero screen that you kind of can't really see what's going on above a certain amount. And you're also trying to save the car because, like, I'm off the throttle. I'm almost in the grass on the inside trying to avoid Graham's giant crash. But yeah, it was an interesting one. And it was a shame. But and it was a real shame because you couldn't really lose track position. And so we kept the broken front wing on. And so we had to finish the race with the broken front wing, which meant that we just weren't as competitive. So it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah. Speaking of being competitive, I mentioned about 2022. Obviously, me and a few guys from over here, we made it out there. One thing that was funny, actually, we met up with Ari Lyondike, who'd come on here. We met up with Ari, and he basically took us in, waved his pass, and said, "You guys can come with me."
Yeah.
And we were actually in the ECR garage. He took us over.
Oh, nice.
Which my mate put his hand on, and I said, "If he crashes first, you're going to be banging trouble." And then the following day, or 2 days later, he did. So you can blame him. His name's Dan. If he's watching, Dan, Remus says,
"Tough look, Dan. Tough look."
Yeah. Don't touch it, Dan. Don't touch it. But that race, when you were again really competitive, and what struck Brits over there was how much support you had. I mean, obviously being a local driver, it was unreal. I mean, when we did the driver presentation, the huge roar went up with you and everything. But one of the coolest moments, as I said off camera, was when you came past us leading in the 500, and we were just outside of turn 4, and the whole place went absolutely crackers. It was an awesome experience. What is it like taking the lead in the 500, even though it's in the middle of a long race? Do you allow yourself to think, "Wow, I'm leading this thing"?
Oh, it's much easier to leading than not. So it's a very satisfying experience just because you're in control a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I've had a good car that year for sure. Didn't quite have the raw speed that we needed. The Ganassi cars were so fast that year. Yeah,
Scott Dixon should have won it, shouldn't he? Scott should have.
Yeah, I mean, I will never forget the speed that Dixon had. Even when I was behind him for a bit, I was like, this guy is insane. Just the raw speed that car had. So again, we were in a great position. Finished 6th, which was happy to be able to be competitive, be at the front. But everything just has to be perfect. But yeah, leading an Indy still is, to be able to have done it once is awesome. But to be able to have now done it a couple times is very satisfying. And that's the place we want to be. That's this year that we plan on getting there again. So hopefully we can execute and get back up front.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's hundreds of thousands of people would love to see that, I'm sure. Just want to touch on 2023. Obviously, you're running again. It ran well at Indy. Didn't the season was difficult, shall we say? I mean, I'm not going to dive into this too deep because of what happened with ECR and all the sponsors. Someone did mention it. I'm just going to have a quick scroll. Sorry, folks, just bear with me a moment. I did see it. I can't remember who it was, but basically it was basically just asking about what happened with ECR and what reasons were you given. I mean, I know you can't say all the ins and the outs of what happened, but a lot of people were surprised because obviously you brought Bitnar to the team, and what happened?
Well, I mean, there's
as much as you can. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's fine to say. I mean, look, there's Renus is a very good driver, right? And so as a teammate, he was very good. The first year there, we were very kind of equal qualifying. We ended up like half the races he qualified better than I did, half the races he qualified better than I did, and kind of equal there. And then in the championship, we were both not too far apart from each other. Like he was definitely not, when he got a win, that was a race that I got taken out, and I was like, dang, I thought we could have won that one. But he was, again, very good at Barber, qualified on pull-up Barber. I was not as good at Barber. I will happily admit that one for sure. And he definitely has a way different driving style than I did. So after a couple years where you're like, we're not really in the window, right? But now I don't think either car was really in the window. There wasn't one that was fighting for the championship and one that wasn't. So, you could, despite how people feel about me, there's a lot of people that hate me. That's fine. But if you look at like just what happens in a team, you either want to fix it yourself, like if the teams either want to improve for the drivers or it's the driver's fault and you get rid of them. And it's easiest to get rid of the driver, right? Because then you either, hopefully, you can prove a point to yourself at the expense of one driver. So that is essentially what happened. I did not know it was coming, but the whole time I'm trying to push the team, like, hey, we need to get better. Like, I believe, first of all, that Renus could be winning a ton of races, and I believe that I can win races in this series. But we're just off. You know, the start of that season, Renus and I both qualified like 20th and 21st. It's like, okay, that's not great. Second race is like kind of the similar. You know, Long Beach, you know, I out-qualify Renus. We're running well, have a minute-long pit stop, just stuff that shouldn't happen. Indy GP, again, kind of goes well, just different issues. But again, Indy 500, you know, I beat the rest of the guys, felt good about that. And Detroit still beat my teammate again before I got ousted. And so then, okay, I'm like, all right, well, you replaced me with a champion. You replaced me with someone who is very good. Now, I'm no expert on data and science, but like if I was the problem, there would have been a turnaround, right? Like usually if the driver is the problem, there's an immediate change. Now, people gave him a lot of time to learn, maybe a different car, stuff like that. But Ryan Hunter-Reay is a very good driver. Yeah. And there was no results in that car. There was nothing that was even close to being as competitive as Renus. The whole like that. So that for me was the best thing that could have happened to me, because realistically, there were a lot of people who said, "Oh, Conor sucks. Conor sucks." It's like, that's fine, because I'm the one behind the wheel. So I'm easiest to blame, and that is okay, because like we're in a tough sport, right? Yeah. But if you speak to people behind the scenes, you know what's going on. Well, like, there's not one car that's like outshining the rest. Like, I think Renus is still one of the best drivers on the grid. I truly believe that. And you know, if you know, at the time when I was fired, there's like, we were 14th and 17th in the championship or something like that. And that car still only dropped to worse and barely made it into the top 22 in leader circle points. And guess what? The exact same thing is happening this year to the 20 car. Like, Renus, I think, is very good at St. Pete, finishing the top 10 at St. Pete. Very good. And he's very fast at Barber. But again, something happens and you get behind. And the 20 car is still like 24th in points. So like, and again, I think Christian Rasmussen, very good driver. I do believe that. But I just think that there is sometimes situations where, for me, again, I'm happy to when I make a mistake, I will always admit it. I'm not claiming to be some Michael Schumacher of the future. Like, that's not what I am at all claiming to be. But if you see an equation and you see, okay, this plus this equals this, well, then this plus get rid of the driver, now we're going to get the right one, that should equal that. Well, that didn't happen. So, you know, there's a situation there that when you find out what was going on behind the scenes too, kind of me trying to get ousted, you know, even with the sponsor that I had brought there, you know, it's kind of a shame. Definitely a shame the way it worked out. But you know, I'm proud of giving everything that I had to that, you know, that organization, tried to do the best I could with it. And if there's, you know, one thing, I hope that someone learned from it, but I'm now teammates with Ryan again, because we both got ousted from that car. Yep. And we agree on a lot of things after both having driven over there. So, you know, it is what it is. Again, you can have any opinion that you want. That's completely fine. Yeah. I don't have results to stand on. Ryan Hunter-Reay does. And there's, you know, it is what it is. My pole came with another team, not the team that I was driving for more. So I go to another team, qualify on the pole. I don't know what else you have to say. So that's just how it works. Again, I won't get that time back. That's fine. But I just try to explain things. Happy to admit that there were a couple times where Renus was for sure better than I was, but there were a lot of times where I think that, you know, I was doing my job as efficiently as I could.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's safe to say it's not always the driver, shall we say.
As they say.
Someone said, we got on YouTube, Homeboy RC has said, it sounds like very similar to how Jack Harvey's time at RLL went. Yes, that seems very similar, but
that is tough. It's a tough situation too, because like I like Jack, and I drove that car. Like, I had to substitute for him, And I mean, that's a bit of a tough one because I did go in and like we did beat the rest of the RLL drivers, but I don't want to say like I feel bad for how that happened with Jack. I still don't. I still believe Jack is a very good driver. He was my teammate in F3, so I know him very well. But yeah, it's a tough situation. Sometimes teams have to make a call that not everyone is going to be happy about.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's just the way racing goes, isn't it?
Yep, it's a tough game. It's ruthless.
Absolutely. Okay, you mentioned the drive this year with Drown Rumble. Cool story behind your sponsorship. I love this whole polka dot thing. It's just a really cool thing to be involved with, and I guess you're going there to win, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, we for sure have we're a little bit behind on a couple things, right? Like there's some new regulations for this year, new pieces on the car gearbox wise, in anticipation for the hybrids, and new things that we're going to be a little bit behind on. We showed up to the test and we haven't driven the car or hadn't had a car on track since last May. So there's a few things that for sure we're going to need to get up to speed on, but when you look at what the team does behind the scenes in the wind tunnel and the development that they're doing, on a lot of other parts of the car, you have to feel confident in it. And there's a reason Ryan is there again. This team is, there's guys employed all year round. The engineers have been working on this program since last May. And Dennis wants to win. Dennis hired me to win. Dennis hired Ryan to win. So, that's what we are planning on doing. That's our goal. And yeah, to be with Polka Dot kind of, which is a very, very, it's we're bringing the future to IndyCar, you know what I mean? Blockchain technology, Web3, a lot of incredible people that are supporting this program in the Polka Dot community. It's awesome. So I'm very pumped to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be a lot of people cheering for you, I'm sure. Being a local guy and it being your outing this year. Just very wary of the time. I saw a question here which ties in nicely. Zoltan Karpathy, I hope I said that right. Apologies if I haven't. He said, what did you have to adjust in your driving style when you stepped into NASCAR? And I guess that is also when you do like the IMSA stuff in Daytona. I mean, but certainly NASCAR is a different beast, isn't it?
Yeah, I think patience is the biggest thing in a NASCAR. It's so much slower than everything I've driven my whole life. It's just patience was really important. And I think those cars are very enjoyable to drive, but you also find out that like in the Xfinity series, for example, the level of equipment is even far more different than any other series that you could be a part of. Almost like it's kind of similar to Formula One. Like Formula One, the level that the Red Bull is at compared to the Williams is wild. You know what I mean? Or even the Alfa Romeo, well, whatever it is now, Steak. Sauber. But yeah, so that was interesting, but it's a fun old school car to drive. You know what I mean? Like it's the Xfinity car was cool. The truck has been really, really fun to drive. The Cup car, I wouldn't say I have the best experience to be able to compare to because the where I was driving was definitely probably with two people working on the car compared to like Hendrick and some bigger teams. It's a bit different, but still an enjoyable. I would love to do more in it. I would love to be able to do more. Getting to do my first truck race with no practice ever is still the craziest thing I think I've ever done with Travis Pastrana. During the COVID year, we literally went to a race and I had never driven the car before and we took the green flag. That's still the craziest thing I've ever done. But we finished well for in truck standards. So it was fun. It was fun to do.
No, cool stuff. Just a couple of tracks I want to talk about. You've raced in the IMSA series at Sebring and Daytona. They're probably the two best known circuits. They must be cool to drive on in an endurance situation.
Yeah, I love Sebring. Getting to do that way back in the day now, 2015. We were on the podium there. I did 6 hours and 27 minutes of the 12-hour race. It was an amazing experience. Fun time to be on the podium there because my dad's in the Sebring Hall of Fame, so that's kind of sweet. But yeah, Rolex as well. One of the most enjoyable tracks I think to drive on. And would love to get another shot at that in the future. I do believe next year, we could be back there. But yeah, just I've been very, very lucky to drive a lot of different tracks. But the next on the list is Le Mans. Still have not driven at Le Mans yet. That's for sure the biggest bucket list item that's left.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly in the hypercar world, we're sort of like a golden era. It seems at the moment.
That would be sick. Yeah,
seems like the whole thing is is in a very good place at the moment. And I had Callum Islet on here, and he's absolutely buzzing to get round Le Mans in there.
Yeah.
Porsche. He's absolutely wired for it. Actually, just very quickly on Callum, obviously he's driven with Arrow McLaren, and we mentioned David Malukas earlier. Someone, who was it? Phil Growney, I think that's right, Phil. He's asked if McLaren have been in touch.
Yeah, they've been in touch telling me that I will not be in that car. So you will not see me in that car, which again, I've kind of sadly crossed that line of there are younger drivers who people might want to discover more of.
Sure.
They would be taking more of a chance to put me in, although I have substituted for McLaren before. Zach Brown did put me in that car in 2019 and we qualified 8th. So like got wrecked within 200 feet of the green flag, but we definitely jumped in and qualified better than some of the other guys have so far. So again, not saying anything, but no, I'm just kidding. That sounds stupid, but that team is amazing. Callum, if he gets another chance to drive that car, he will do a great job.
Yeah,
I think Theo Pourchaire is a good driver as well. He's got a lot to learn in IndyCar. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what route they go. I think a lot of the sponsors on that team want Tony Kanaan to get back in that car, but I don't know how. I don't think Tony wants to get back in it. So
a lot of people would like that, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
He's itching to get in there.
Yeah.
Or Montoya, who knows? No, probably not.
No, if Montoya ends up back in that would be wild.
Good Lord, wouldn't that be something?
I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's one that probably is on the list of probably not going to happen.
Yeah, it's on the fantasy list, isn't it? Okay, we're going to wind down with some fun questions, and I'll just see another one coming in, which we're going to finish on. Okay, fun questions that we always try and wind down with. Outside of the ones that you race in at the moment, are there any series that you follow super closely? Or do you just watch everything?
I watch everything, honestly. I mean, if I'm not racing, if I'm not doing something myself, I mean, I'm watching every NASCAR session, trucks, Xfinity Cup, Formula One. I still love paying attention to it as I, supporting a lot of friends over there. Love to see, I have a family connection to Williams since my dad drove there. So I like to support them.
And they're my local team. Grove's about 35 miles just over my shoulder.
Exactly. I'd love for them to let me drive his old car at some point. I don't know how that happens, but I'm going to have to talk to James. I saw Leah Block gets to drive it at Goodwood or something, which is really cool. I know the Block family really well now, but that'll be sweet. But I follow everything. I mean, I really do. I am the person who still finds it wild that you can't watch all of motorsport. Like if you like Formula One, well, why don't you like also IndyCar? And maybe NASCAR is a bit of a stretch, but like, I don't understand why there's like such a segregated fan base. Like, nope, I can only like this one or I can only like that one. It's like, I like all of them. I like car racing. I like the different styles of car racing.
Yep.
I like to watch sports car racing if it's on. Thankfully in the days of technology now, we've got YouTube, which streams some of the SRO races. There's all kinds of racing that's on. And so I like to watch it all. I really do. As much as I can, feed it to me. I'm an addict for motorsport.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's the whole reason I set this thing up. You got F1 fans or touring cars or this car or that. Have it all in the same place. It's all racing. It's all good. Let's just watch it and enjoy it. That's the whole point of me setting this thing up.
True.
Which is cool. Very quickly, we did touch on Nitrocross. That looks fun.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot to learn there. It all happens very fast. Short stints, short races. But dirt stuff is hard for me to adjust to, but I've enjoyed being a part of that. Love supporting Travis Pastrana and what he's doing. He's been so kind to me in my career, a person that has done more for me than most people I've known my whole life have done. So he's an incredible dude. An incredible series. I think Dana White buying that series. There's a lot of exciting stuff, I think, in the future for that series. And they're really fast cars. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's very cool to watch as well, folks. If you want to, if you want to check out some Nitrocross, check it out on YouTube. It's some cool stuff. More fun, quick fire questions. Before we wind down. You've driven a lot of stuff. Is there anything that you'd like to try that you haven't yet done, like supercars in Australia or?
Yeah, I almost
racing over here, touring cars, and
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just Le Mans is still on my bucket list. Need to do Le Mans. Would love to drive a hypercar, but not sure if that's going to happen. But certainly could probably do it in the GT level. The Bathurst, the Bathurst 1000. I literally had a contract to do that when I was driving for Andretti, and they ended up picking Hinch instead of me because I think the event wanted Hinch because he was definitely more famous than me. So I had a contract, had flights booked to do the Bathurst 1000 with Alex Rossi. And ended up being Hinchcliffe over there. So again, those are two of my best friends, so I don't mind. But I was so looking forward to that. So I would love to do that. That would be a sweet event. But yeah, that's kind of it right now on the list.
Yeah, it sounds like Hinch owes you one.
Yeah, no, he does not. He let me live in his house for free. Hinch owes me absolutely nothing. If anything, I owe him.
He actually owes me a signed photo. He said he'd do that. He hasn't done it yet.
There you go.
We'll have a word. It's been 2 years now, Hinch. Come on. No. Okay. What's the best racing car you've ever driven?
That's a good question. I mean, the V8 era F1 car was sick. But the 2021 car that I had at the Indy 500 was like the most enjoyable and the most competitive I've ever felt. So like that was sweet. That was when you feel like you can win the greatest race in the world. There's nothing like that one.
Yeah, cool. Good answer. We like that. How was Alex Rossi as a teammate? That's a shocking question.
I mean, he's good, and he doesn't care about anyone else. So that's what you need to be, though. In racing, like you're not meant to be like a hey everyone's friend. Alex Rossi is very good. He's very good, very talented, and it's a good person to hate up. So I think Alex, and he was cool to me. I mean, he's not like he was a dick or anything, but like he was he's a strong teammate to have.
Yeah, cool. We like that. I think James Hinchcliffe said the same thing. He's just he's just a solid, dependable guy.
Business, yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite circuit to drive on and one that you don't like so much?
I mean, Indy's my favorite, but that's easy. Indy is still, there's nothing like it, but also the road course at Indy. I love the Indy road course. It's a great racing track for open wheel cars, for sports cars. Spa is still my favorite track in Europe. A low key kind of like random favorite track that I really enjoyed was the Sepang circuit in Malaysia. Loved driving that in GP2 2013. Loved that racetrack. But my least favorite track is Barber and Lime Rock Park. I hate Lime Rock Park with everything in my soul for some reason. And Barber, a great driving track, but it just does not suit my style for whatever reason.
And it does look nice, Barber. It looks very pretty.
It does look great. And boy, we saw one of the best road races I've ever seen over the weekend at Barber. But
that was a cool race.
Just not for me, not my track.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, very last one from the comment section. Phil Granny again. Formula E, do you get it? Fast and good at saving battery life.
I have a ton of friends in Formula E. Like most of my GP3 and GP2 graduating class are in Formula E. Great friends. But I've been to a race. They treated me well at Formula E. I don't really. It's not. I mean, I would be open to doing it, but it's still European enough to where they're probably never going to hire an American driver.
Sure.
So there's that. Sadly, that's just how it works. But hey, if it's successful and there are drivers making as good of money as I know that they're making, which is insane money, then all the more power to them. I hope it's successful for forever. Because my buddies are making great money doing it. So that's good.
Excellent. No, good stuff. Okay, two more. Did you have a racing hero growing up? Apart from your dad?
Yeah, I mean, Dan Weldon was a hero of mine for sure. Yeah. He was always very kind to me when I was coming through the ranks. Thomas Schechter, I thought, was an absolute savage on the racetrack. He could do things that I think people could never really do. And then, honestly, the model that was Lewis Hamilton, like Lewis was the best, and he was just doing things that I think, I don't really have a favorite now. Right. But when I was growing up, Lewis was the guy, right? He was the guy that was just, dominating. So he was someone that, was like, hey, that's that. If you're going to be the best, like that's the best.
Yeah. Now it's good to hear some love for Lewis. He's having a bit of a tricky time at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear some love for Lewis. I'm a big fan of Lewis. He's brilliant.
There you go. I'm
And
not surprised.
and I've met his brother Nick, who is another just equally amazing.
I have as well. Yeah, nice guy.
Amazing guy. For him to get into a racing car is incredible. Amazing.
Yeah,
guy.
Absolutely.
Okay, final question. I'm going to name some of the drivers here that you've raced against. I've got a list. This isn't from memory. You've raced guys like Jeff Gordon, Philip Albuquerque, Rango van der Zande, Brendan Hartley, Jan Magnussen, Mike Conway, Heidfeld, Bourdais, Bottas, Sato, Kanan, Rossi, Hinch. Got to put Hinch in. Marcus Ericsson, Felix Rosenquist, Newgarden, Ray Hall, Montoya, Hunter Ray, Palou, Castro Neves, Alonso, McLaughlin, Power, Dixon. I mean, you've raced against some good guys. Are there any that stick out in your mind?
That's hilarious.
As being,
technically, there's been a lot of people. Yeah, that's wild.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a few more I could put in there as well. But yeah,
I mean, you completely skipped Bottas, Sainz, like current guys in F1. Like that's the funniest part.
Well, I thought I'd make it kind of more IndyCar American side.
No,
but
right.
But no, Bottas and all these guys. Are there any that kind of stick out in your mind as being just another level or just harder to race against, or anyone like that? Is there anyone in your mind that you think, oh yeah, they are good?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, guys in IndyCar, guys like Will Power in qualifying are able to do stuff that you're just like, how in the world is he doing it?
He's unreal.
Yeah, Will Power in qualifying is such a savage, and I will never forget. Like this will never really ever be remembered, but one of my favorite moments of my career in IndyCar was Indy GP qualifying. I think 2022 or 2022 maybe. Q1, obviously we have Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q1 I was quickest. P1 Will Power was second, and so obviously we move on to Q2. And I think Q2 we got a bad set of red tires or something. I ended up qualifying like 7th or so, something like that. But Q1, I will never forget Will Power. He's like, dude, I was giving it everything I had, and like you were faster. Like that was crazy. How'd you do that? I was like, what? I mean, I was like, I thought it was a good lap, and it was a good lap. And to have the respect that Will Power gave me then after that was still like one of the coolest things ever. Because like Will be honest with you. Will is like the most honest, fast driver ever. Like if you're faster than him, he's like, how the heck did you do that? Because like he believes like he is the best. And I love that. And so that was a really cool moment to get the respect in qualifying qualifying from Will Power. Him doing that is insane. And one other, I would say in IndyCar at least, gosh, it is a great question. Maybe I'll just go with, I mean, Scott Dixon is inevitable, I guess. Like, I don't know how now you can't, like, he's one of the luckiest drivers I've ever seen in my life, but you also have to be so good to take advantage of that. Scott Dixon ends up doing things where you're like, how did that happen? I don't get it.
Just like at the weekend with his fuel saving.
Yeah, so Scott Dixon does things that you have to just ask, how in the world is that possible? And when that happens a lot, and he's got 6 championships, it probably means he's one of the best drivers that's ever lived. So I would say that. Yeah.
No, that's a good answer. And just go back to Will Power. I had Will on here, and it was just an absolute riot. It was brilliant. He's a good guy as well as a very good racer as well. But but yeah, I think Scott Dixon at the moment is fair shout.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, he's been. Yeah, he just keeps churning it out, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's a good guy. Right, well, it's run on an hour and 44 minutes. Goodness. But I hope. Sorry, we've kept you a bit longer than planned.
Right. I got to go run my suit to the dry cleaner. I got this event in 2 days.
Yeah, right. We'll let you do that before it all closes down. But Crazy guys, thank you very much for tuning in, for the comments and the questions. I do hope we've covered it all. And Conor, huge thanks to you. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
I've been wanting to have you on it for a while, and we can probably thank your dad for putting us directly in touch. But no, it's been great speaking with you. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to do it. And appreciate all the questions. It brought back a lot of good memories. There's been a lot of tougher times over the last couple of years that have been, not as fun as it used to be. So
Yeah.
it's nice to talk about the times that have been very, very enjoyable in my life.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's hope for a very enjoyable Indy 500 for you. And of course, we wish you all the very best for that, and in whatever ventures you have coming up thereafter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, guys. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks.